Me too, I saw it the other day.
concentrated area, so you could just tell how things were laid out. Park and green space.
Did you actually?
No, a little while, yeah. And it was already getting.
Yeah.
Not a notary.
Your comment to Don, it made me laugh out loud.
Timing is up today, but we got a second
Mm-mm.
the whole weekend.
Worth going back for? All
Absolutely.
right, I will.
Patrick, could you turn as they say, Dwayne, it's softer.
Affordable is. Well, Bowling Green is only about 40,000.
By the way,
Oh,
Bill,
okay.
someone already get the water. I normally pick a Nestle product and I go over and I see that.
Where is it?
You know, something tells me I should get that one. I looked at Sock Step before up here, so.
Oh,
was like-
okay.
I don't think I've ever done that to you.
We were in Rochester, New York.
Depending on traffic.
But you'll see that this right.
We were in Rochester, New York in August. And I-
Anyway, so
Anyways, it was good.
Right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and this is the Committee of the Whole meeting, October 23, 2017, for the City of DeKalb. A reminder that for any folks who might want to speak to the item that is listed on the agenda for this Committee of the Whole meeting, if you'd kindly fill out a speaker request form. They're located in the back of the room, and kindly give those to our Deputy City Clerk, Ruth Scott, today. And I'd ask Mrs. Scott to please call the roll.
Jacobson, Fanouken,
Here.
Markwart,
Here.
Fagan,
Here.
Noriko,
Here.
Verbic,
Here.
Favor, Smith,
Here.
6 present.
Thank you. There are no items on this agenda which are on the regular agenda for this evening for the City Council meeting. We have one consideration at our Committee of the Whole meeting, and that was requested by 2 aldermen, and I believe those were Alderman Jacobson and Alderman Verbic. It is on outdoor smoking regulations. And here to give us a little background on that is our Community Development Director, Jo Ellen Charlton. Jo Ellen?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As the Mayor indicated, this item is being brought to your consideration tonight by 2 aldermen. And part of the request is to ask whether there's interest on behalf of the council to reconsider a 2014 ordinance which was approved and regulated additional restrictions on outdoor smoking. So specifically, it was smoking on outdoor patios of restaurants and bars. The state of Illinois has regulations on indoor smoking, and in addition to those regulations, the city, in working very closely with its environmental commission and based on quite a bit of discussion that happened in 2014, decided to adopt additional restrictions that would carry some of the indoor restrictions to these outdoor patio areas for restaurants and bars. The question posed by the 2 aldermen asking to have this considered tonight is to compare it to the state regulations. Really, there's 2 bodies of the state that have regulations with regard to outdoor smoking, and applying both the state law and the IDPH, the Illinois Department of Public Health regulations. It's unlawful to smoke within 15 feet of any door, openable window, or ventilation intake area of any bar or restaurant, or in any area where the smoke drifts into the regulated areas. That drifting language is very subjective and can be utilized by people well beyond those boundaries. So one of the things that is of benefit to DeKalb for having this restriction in place is that it kind of gets rid of any of the gray areas where you might want to try and determine how far that drift occurs. If it's not there, you don't have to worry about trying to regulate against it. Again, this comes to you with some recommendations that it be reconsidered. It would be our recommendation that if there is a majority of the council that are interested in having further dialogue, that it would go back to the Environmental Commission, because they did spend quite a bit of time in 2014 talking about this issue. I think that's all the comments I can make at this point. If you have any questions, myself or Dean would be happy to answer them for you.
Okay, thank you, Joellen. Discussion among the city council. Alderman Verbeek.
And yes, for me, it was just bringing forward the discussion from business owners, patrons, why are we different than Sycamore, for example, and why should we defer from the state language? And, for myself, I'm not one to try to run someone's business and believe it's in the interest of the business owner to determine how to best run their business and what's best, and certainly up to the patron as to whether they decide to visit a particular business for one reason or another, which is why I thought that this was worth discussion for council.
Thank you. Alderman Fanouken.
As Joellen alluded to, that both the original no smoking ordinance and the patio no smoking ordinance originated out of the Environmental Commission. And the city of DeKalb's original no smoking ordinance preceded the state's. And with the patio no smoking that has been under consideration now in Springfield also, and again, we're being a forerunner on that. Even though it's outdoors, you still have the dangers of the secondhand smoke. The employees are still subject to the smoke on patios if we have it. One of the concerns was brought forward last time was how the receipts were going to be impacted. And in the statement in here that the tax receipts have not had any identifiable decline because of our smoking ordinance. So I would happy to leave it as it is, because I don't see any way to expand it as much as I might like to. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Fanouken. Alderman Faber.
So I was just, thinking about the ordinance as well, and it's interesting that I think it's the times have changed to where it is almost anticipated that most places will be non-smoking these days. I don't have anything against smoking, but I was trying to think of how we could go forward in changing this into allowing, smoking on patios, outdoor. If someone was eating a meal and they don't like smoking, the wind changes, and so it'd be very difficult to try and, unless we had a smoking section only, we go back to those days, but it would have to be walled off or sealed or things like that you see in, I don't know, if you go to off-track betting, they actually have these rooms that are smoking only rooms, but I think it's, in our society today, I think it's become more of an accepted no smoking policy, and I just think it would be very difficult to try and change that today.
And as it relates to patios, it's very difficult to section off,
Yes,
with a
absolutely.
wall, any part of the patio, and as somebody suggested, the wind changes and you get that. If you take a look at this ordinance, and I have studied it, there's not only the situation about having to be 15 feet from an entrance to the inside facility, and if you're within that 15 foot, you are not in regulation. The other is there's this, and I can't remember the terminology the state used, drift or something like that, where the smoke may, drift into another. So, yeah, I can see where you're coming from, Alderman Faber.
Thank you.
Okay. Hello, Alderman Jacobson.
Hello.
We have been discussing the no smoking ordinance on patios, and you were one who requested that we bring this to the city council. Would you have any comments on this?
Of course.
Thank you. Go for it.
I know in having the conversation, the reason I brought it up was in having the conversation with a few of our local business owners, specifically in my ward, and I think in both Tony or Mike's ward, right on that border there. several of the owners expressed some frustration in the fact that we have done some enforcement of our local ordinance and going to the businesses and asking them, obviously, to enforce the no smoking on the patio rule that we have here in DeKalb. Some of their concerns and their issues have been the fact that it's a public safety issue. To meet the burden that we're asking them to do, most of the customers have to be out in the parking lot if they're smoking. And there's been a couple very close calls and at least 1 or 2 people hit by cars out in the parking lots while they've been smoking, especially out at night. One of the other major concerns was the fact that they feel that they're losing revenue from it, whether it's anecdotally or otherwise. I know I also had the chance to speak to a bar owner up in Sycamore that made the comment to me it was the best thing that ever happened to his business because so many people have come up to visit his bar in Sycamore because they're allowed to smoke on his rooftop patio. I understand in looking at some of the numbers in the broad sense of restaurant and bar tax, it's sort of hard to break some of those numbers down to the individual places where it's occurring, but from the bar owner and business owner's perspective, it has drastically hurt their business, and they have never seen a recovery since the smoking ordinances, both in the state and the city, have taken effect as far as they're concerned against them. So they are asking now, obviously, we have significantly less bars in town than we did a few years ago when the law was passed. They would point somewhat to the smoking ordinances as the rationale and reason behind that, and asking that we look back at it now and saying, hey, common sense wise, does it make sense that they have significant build out in these patios and there are a significant amount of other issues that surround it, whether it's enforcement issues that are causing them to have to hire significantly more staff to let people in and out of their establishments because they have to monitor who's coming in from the parking lot that was smoking, especially at capacity times, that this is something costing them money that's creating a liability both to the public and to their business in terms of their insurance by people getting hit by cars, but potentially getting hit by cars. And at the same time, pushing people out toward their cars when they otherwise may have stayed on the patio to enjoy more revenue producing items, both for that business and us as a city as our highest tax item. They asked that we get it back up and had a discussion to see, obviously, if you're standing right outside the patio, the smoke is drifting onto the patio anyway. So their theory is why are we going through all this to really not solve any real issue, but create several at the same time.
Alderman Fanouken.
Well, Dave, I'd love to hear of some of these specific incidents you're talking about, and also according to the state regulations, that it shouldn't be able to drift into that area either. So if you're saying that that's one of the things that it's drifting in there anyway, well then, that's another reason then to even extend the area even further beyond what we're doing now. But could you tell me some place specifically that has had to hire extra help?
Fatties, Molly's, specifically, both of them have complained about it.
Okay, now see, I have not observed extra staff at Fatty's at all. I cannot speak to Molly's because it's not one of the places I go to, but I can speak that I have not seen that happen at Fatty's.
I've spoken to both the bar manager and the bouncer manager, and they now have to have 2 bouncers out there to monitor where people are smoking and to have an extra person down at the end of the ramp to make sure that they are off the patio. So it's now caused them double staff on weekends.
Right, but see, if they were 15 feet away from the door to begin with, then it wouldn't be an issue. But again, I have not observed what incidents you're referring to, and have we had, let me ask Officer Petrella, have we had any incidents that you're aware of where somebody in the parking lot's been hit by a car because they're out smoking?
Not that I'm aware of.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments? Alderman Noriko.
Alderman Jacobson has mentioned people who smoke who elect to go elsewhere so that they can continue to do that. I would be curious, and unfortunately, I don't think there's any way to determine this figure, the extent to which people who, for a variety of reasons, don't want to be subjected to smoke, to secondhand smoke, now feel more comfortable going to places, whether inside or out on the patio, whether given, people smoking less in general, whether that has provided more opportunities for businesses.
Thank you. Any further comment? Alderman Fagan.
It's so hard to say what is right and what's wrong on this situation. I do have a question on legal. If they're open to the patio, do they still need to be 15 feet away from the door? So you've got certain, like take Fatty's. I mean, their door into the entryway into their building, you can be in that. You can be 15 feet, you can be 5 feet, you could be 30 feet. So what I'm saying is with the patio, I mean, do you have to be still 15 feet away from the door to smoke?
Yes, so in the absence of the local regulation on patios, if in Sycamore at a bar, for example, if you're on their patio but you're within 15 feet of a door, an openable window, or a ventilation intake, you're not permitted to smoke.
Okay. So that's what I'm looking at. So that's going to be limiting the space on patios also, so you still got to keep the 15 feet. And the other side of the sword that you can hear is, well, they're outside, take Rosita's or wherever that's out there, and the people are eating their food and drinking their drinks while cars are driving by with the exhaust going by, right? So, I mean, there's two sides of every story. I mean, further conversation on that, and I'd be willing to hear it. Thank you.
Alderman Jacobson?
In response to what Alderman Noriko brought up, I agree there should be space for all people to enjoy the bar as it sits. And there is a space, if you don't like smoke, for you to be in the bar and enjoy the rest of the bar atmosphere. There is not for smokers. It not only is it discriminatory toward them, the businesses are saying that they want this, and it's their property. So again, for us to legislate above and beyond state law at the detriment of our business goes against the business friendliness we've been asking for. And while I appreciate there are people that absolutely don't like secondhand smoke or smoke to begin with, especially when reading the article that the Chronicle posted, overwhelmingly most people said it's silly and it shouldn't exist. The few that openly spoke out against smoking were anti-smoking, not just secondhand smoke. And that's fine. That's their opinion. If we were to go in and tell those people, well, then you can't enter the premises, you have to stand out in the parking lot, what would we look like as a city council?
Well, but David, we're not telling them they can't go in. They just can't go in and smoke.
Again, if we told the people that didn't smoke they couldn't go in because of their opinion, it would be the same thing because of what they liked or didn't like to do. You're talking about an establishment where we allow gambling and where we allow drinking. There's a lot of people that don't like those things either. If you choose to go to a bar, those are the atmosphere you're going to be exposed to, and you know that when you walk in.
But neither one of those harm a third party where the secondhand smoke
That has
can.
not been proven. And no more so than exhaust does. If you're so worried about what you're breathing in, stand an inch and a half the way they've done the studies from your tailpipe and see how you feel afterwards. It won't be good.
Yeah, but I'm not an inch and a half away from a smoker either. I can
Correct.
still
That's what I'm
bother.
saying. By the time it approaches you, the smoke approaches you, well, you may dislike the smell. Well, it may inconvenience you. In reality, the health benefits the health detriments have never been proven by any reliable study. And it's more of a preference of dislike than it is a health concern. So again, I didn't believe when it came through community enhancement, it was even appropriate to do so. It wasn't an appropriate topic they forwarded up. It was a political topic that they knew they can get passed through a partisan but nonpartisan city council. And I thought now that we have a much more independent group of thinkers that at least we should bring it up and have the discussion. Does it make sense to go above and beyond the state law at a detriment to our local business.
I would say that it's not at a detriment and that we've actually are better off than we were. When you consider how many fewer college students are here in town, but the bar business has stayed the same according to the tax revenues, then I would say that they're not at a detriment.
Alderman Favor.
So I'm unable to open up the attachment in the agenda. I'll ask Alderman Jacobson, what is the difference between the DeKalb smoking regulations and the state regulations? I mean, could I open, in the state regulations, I could open a bar and I could have a smoking section within a bar?
Yes. And this, oh, not within the bar, no.
You
You
have to
cannot
still be
smoke-
out, still have to be outside,
In a business open to the public.
yes.
You may not have interior smoking unless you meet one of the very narrow exemptions, which would be, in our case, a vape shop in our city, which we also disallow, and, or a cigar bar, or those things, which are private membership bar. And to do that, you have to have a standalone parcel with standalone utilities and ventilation. There's several requirements. For a bar open to the public that wouldn't be a private club, it falls under Illinois Smoke-Free Act, which says you cannot smoke within 15 feet of a door, a exhaust system for an air conditioning, or open window. And other than that, on the property, it would be acceptable. You're outside effectively. So as long as you're not within that 15-foot buffer zone that the Smoke-Free Act stipulates, then yes. In any other community that didn't have this ordinance or regulation, you could be outside on a patio and smoke if you'd like to.
So I mean, I'm in agreement, with that. I don't find that to be too difficult. I mean, again, it's one of those things like we're talking about is the market choice of if a business is frequented by primarily smokers and I want to sit out on a patio, then I wouldn't go to that location. It would be my choice if that's what I choose to do. Or if I choose to smoke, then that would be the establishment I frequent. So I do follow. I was trying to figure out how we would, I guess, change it to allow. But again, if the state is just the 15 feet from the entrance, I mean, that's.
Another legal question too, Dean. If a bar in DeKalb who has a patio chose to have no smoking anywhere, they can certainly do that.
Yes.
Okay, even if we change an ordinance that said, if you are a bar and you want to have smoking outside, you can. If a particular restaurant does not want it, they just simply say no smoking.
Correct.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, in Sycamore, I know of one place that does not allow smoking on their patio.
Right, okay.
In DeKalb, Starbucks does not allow smoking anywhere 15 foot from their patio. They have had that well before our ordinance. They don't allow it at their business, and they have the right as their
That's
private
right.
property to do so.
That's right. Okay, I think we've heard those who wanted to comment on this. We're not taking a vote tonight, but I think we probably need some consensus on whether or not we want to move this forward. And Joe Ellen, you're at the suggestion of staff, we would move this back to the Citizens Environmental Commission, is that correct?
That's correct.
For their thought, since they were very instrumental in, as Dave suggested, bringing it forward to a former city council. Is there consensus that we should send this back to Citizens Environmental Commission, City Environmental Commission, to give us some additional information if they have it regarding this? Tony, you're saying yes. Mike, you're saying?
Sure.
Okay.
Just for the benefit of getting additional perspective.
Okay.
Okay, but.
Okay. Yes. Okay. I think I get, Mike, you're shaking your head no, you,
I didn't realize that you could smoke on patio and Sycamore either. I just assumed that patios were an extension of the building and were smoke-free.
Which is the case right now in DeKalb.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm, I guess, for more of a smoke-free environment in those cases, but that's a, so I'm debating it internally between personal preference and, you know, what you can do, but I'm also looking at it from an enforcement. You know, we kind of go all the way back to, how do you enforce it? You know, you're going to have to really almost mark off the pavement, mark off this and mark off that. And I was thinking of patios. You know, you're going to have people that are going to have to almost stand right at the, with their backs against the patio fence. You know, okay, I'm 16 feet away. At that point, you know, in some of these cases, because the patios aren't that big.
Okay.
Yeah, sure, fatties and fanaticals are probably the ones that are, could get far enough away from the door, I guess. From an enforcement standpoint, it's just kind of hard, you know, to do that, so. But if I want to talk more about it and come up with something, that's fine.
Bill, how do you feel?
I'm happy with the way the ordinance sits now.
Okay. David, you'd like more discussion on it?
Indeed.
By the Citizens Environmental? Yeah, I think that's what we'll do then, Joe Ellen, is I think I hear consensus here. I see different views, and apparently there's enough consensus here that we ought to move this back to the Citizens Environmental Commission, and they will make a recommendation to the City Council for action at a subsequent meeting. Fair enough?
Yes. Thank you.
Any further comments, Joe Ellen?
No, we will refer this to the commission.
Okay. Any comments from the audience on this? If not, okay. I'd like now to suggest that we recess for executive session of the City Council, and for the sake of time, I'm going to suggest that I read both the item for recess for executive session from the Committee of the Whole meeting. I'm also going to add the title for the recess for executive session, which is listed on your agenda for the regular City Council meeting, because we might be able to take care of both of these prior to our 6 p.m. start for City Council, if that's okay with my fellow councilmen.
Yes.
Okay, good. So I would call for a recess for executive session of the City Council. Number 1, for approval to hold an executive session to discuss the purchase or lease of real property as provided for in 5 ILCS 120/2C5, and also approval to hold an executive session to discuss personnel as provided in 5 ILCS 120/2C1. Do I have a motion to to recess to executive session?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Roll call.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Markwart,
Yes.
Fagan,
Yes.
Noriko,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
8 yes.
Fine. We'll recess into executive session. We'll have city council meeting at 6 o'clock or thereabouts. Thank you.